So you were a heroin addict, and you almost died probably a few times.
So it's like that little hidden away thing you put in Pandora's box and lock it up. And people think that they're monsters inside because of what these addictions start to cause them to do. My entire life is opened up as a result of taking that first step. Talk about your feelings, reach out to people, whatever the hell it is you have to do.
So what's the one thing, person, or moment in time that finally made you say, I'm done with this, I can't do this anymore, I can't live this way anymore, I'm gonna seek help and really follow through with it, compared to any other time you might have said that you were really done this time?
It's a great question, and I would say the breaking point for me was when my family confronted me because they could see that my life was in shambles and I couldn't hide it anymore. Even though I thought I was hiding it, it was pretty evident that I needed help severely. And it was my first opportunity to admit defeat and admit that I needed help, which I had known for quite a while, probably 6 to 12 months. But that would probably be the breaking point, to see the pain that I was causing my family and to see how much it tore my mother apart. I would say pushed me to actively start seeking help, to solve some of my problems and start putting my life back together.
So it was when you saw that your family came together and approached you, and like they pretty much had like an intervention type thing, or
Yeah, it was I guess you would call it an intervention that they had, but they did take a nice approach to it, and it wasn't like what you see on TV shows like Intervention, I think is what the one is called. It was more so they invited my brother and I over to eat dinner one night, and I actually picked the dinner up. We ordered it to go somewhere. I had no idea, what was going on or what they were about to do. But we ate dinner. Actually, they were camping at the time. We ate dinner, sat down in a camper, had a nice dinner, and they kind of slowly asked me if something was going on. And I'd say that their approach was really good. However, at the time, my dad was having a hard time with it because I created so many issues in my life that he was more old school, like, hey, get your shit together, stop screwing around, you're causing problems type of approach, whereas like my mom and my brother were more of the loving, soft approach. And quite honestly, I needed a little of both. And it did get a little bit tense. There was some tension when my dad first started to speak up because he was having a hard time with it. And he ultimately left the camper, the area that we were, and kind of went for a walk or whatever. And over time, him and I started to talk more and more in-depth conversations, and I admitted some of the things that I did, and we were able to kind of start rebuilding our relationship when I showed him that I did have a desire to get better, to improve, and told him I just needed help to do it because I was beyond defeated. I needed to start somewhere. But he was supportive the entire time and still is to this day, years later.
what's The one thing, or what are the things, feelings, or thoughts that stopped you from following through with getting help and sticking with it until you got better, whether it was before you got help or the times that you relapsed?
I would say two main things. Just kind of thinking back and putting myself back in my mind at the time. The first thing that came to mind every time I thought about getting help was fear that I would never be able to use this drug again, because I didn't know how long it would take to get on the other side of not being sick anymore. And at the time, I still held on to my job just barely, so it was a way to get me through the day, each day, and I didn't know how I was going to function without it and get to work and take care of my responsibilities. And I knew that I was going to have to go to an inpatient treatment of some sort, because I'd tried a couple like outpatient counseling service type setups, and I needed to just go to inpatient and do a full detox. And the thought of just disappearing, not losing my job, and going through that whole process, it was scary. And humans naturally are resistant to change, and I was very resistant to change at the time, so that really scared me, and I didn't know how I was going to handle it. I would say that would be the biggest thing. And sorry, there was another part to that question.
Yeah, the question was, what's the one thing, or what are the things, feelings, thoughts that stopped you from following through with getting help and sticking with it until you got better, whether it was before you got help or during the times that you relapsed? What were you thinking, or what stopped you, and why did you relapse?
Well, one of the
times that you relapsed, if you did relapse.
Mm-hmm. And I did relapse once, but the thought, the fear that I had of proceeding with getting help, that was the main one, and a big part of that, which I would almost put in a separate bucket, I would say, is the shame and being ashamed of myself. And I had a pretty good job. I worked for a municipality, so I was kind of in a public eye in a small way in a smaller town. But to me at the time, it was a big deal. And I was very scared I was going to lose my job. But even if I didn't, I was filled with shame at the thought of admitting what I'd been doing and how bad it had gotten. And in my own little world at the time, I thought I was still fooling everybody around me, and I wasn't. Like, it was very obvious that something was going on in my life. My life was like spinning out of control. But in the mindset, the state of mind that I was in at the time, I somehow had convinced myself that I was still pulling it off. Like, I can continue on doing things this way. And I couldn't. Like, it was to the breaking point. So having some support was huge with my family. And later on, it turned out everybody who I was worried would find out what was going on and how bad of things I was doing. The people that I expected to think bad of me or negatively of me were the people who were most supportive, which was a big surprise to me.
Yeah, I think it is to a lot of people. I was thinking back to breakfast this morning and the story that you mentioned of when you were the most embarrassed ever in your whole life. You said that was one of the moments that you felt just absolutely the worst form of embarrassment was when you had to go, I guess, seek medical help, and then you were mentioning something about everybody at work freaking knew, and like it was, and like you lied about why you had missed work for so long or something. So
Yeah.
can you kind of just refresh me?
Yeah, I was quite literally concocting stories to explain my absence from work, and my boss at the time knew something was going on, and he was supportive, even though I didn't give him details. He's like, "Hey, do what you need to do. Your job's still here. You know, get yourself well," kind of thing. But I had a number of back problems for years, and I had some procedures done. They were somewhat minor procedures, but surgical procedures on my back. And I concocted like a whole story of why I disappeared from my job for a month, and with no warning. And there was a lot of people at that municipality that depended on me. So to me, it was a big deal. It was like I just disappeared, and it's like, how do I come back? And I wasn't at a place yet mentally to come back and just tell them like, oh yeah, you know, became a severe drug addict and went off to inpatient treatment. It's like, I had no idea how people would respond to something like that. And I hadn't evolved enough yet at the time, mentally or spiritually or within my own personal development, to know that it doesn't matter. Like, it was okay for me to come back and tell. I mean, the people, the guys I worked with, they were friends, so they ultimately understood. So I could have come back and just sat down with everybody and said, "Listen, this is what happened. It's really caused problems in my life, and this is what I'm doing to fix it." And I'm very certain today that they would have been supportive right then and there. Instead, I used issues with my back to say, oh, I had to go in and get this unexpected procedure done. And really, it was lying. I mean, I was concocting stories just to try to cover up and avoid needing to face the shame that I knew I was going to feel by coming clean and essentially going public with it.
And most people aren't stupid.
They
They know.
Yeah. People have a very good radar. They can sense when something's up or when somebody's, you know, filling you full of bullshit, basically. As far as relapsing goes, since you mentioned that, I only relapsed once. I had tried to get clean a couple times before, but I never had like an actual period of clean time. So I never considered those relapses, but after I went to treatment, got out, and I was clean for, I can't remember, I think it was 2 to 3 months.
Did you just check yourself in, or did you make a plan ahead of time of what you were going to do to conquer this? Or were you just like planless? You're like, F it, like, I'm just going to walk in, I'm done, I need to walk in and just...
The latter, pretty much. My mom, bless her, after I had that in-depth, hard conversation with them, and I told them mostly everything that had happened, and the fact that I was currently using heroin, and in between heroin doses, I was getting whatever drug I could to get me through, basically whatever I could get my hands on to keep myself from getting sick. That was hard to talk to them about, because they didn't realize I was using, that I'd gone to that length to actually start using heroin. So once we got past that, a little emotional episode, I would say, my mom went straight to action mode and did what I was unable to do at the time, and started researching treatment centers, like what do you do, how do you approach it, and she found a few different options, started calling around to see their availability, and it's actually the town that I was born in, Marshfield, Wisconsin, and she called and got things set up with them. Luckily, at the time, I had really good insurance through my employer, so I was able to get quite a bit of the treatment covered. Otherwise, it would have been difficult, but not impossible, to pay for it. And there's other programs nowadays that help people cover the costs of different types of treatments. So at least there's options today, but other than that, like, she told me, this is a treatment center that I found, here's what they're about, it is an inpatient, and I thought, well, F it, like, I have no other option at this point, I don't know what else to do, I might as well give it a try. So I literally just went there. I actually used every bit of drugs that I had left, and the whole way driving there, my mother and my brother went with me, and they took my dog at the time to watch him and take care of him, and they drove me there, and I was so out of it that I was like pretty much passing out and nodding out the whole way there. They were scared, they didn't know if I was overdosing or what. But I do remember walking into the place, and they had a questionnaire and all this stuff I had to do. And then they got me checked in, and that was a medication-assisted treatment, which are harder to find nowadays, but they put an IV in right away and basically pumped me full of drugs like phenobarbital. They gave me a bunch of muscle relaxers, and Suboxone is the first thing they started me on, and that was way before I ever started taking Suboxone. And the next few days was kind of a blur, but I did voluntarily check myself in only after I was beyond defeated, and it had pushed me to that point.
So, I guess what I'm hearing is that it's extremely important to reach out and get over the fear of embarrassment, and really just take that one step that seems to be the hardest step when you're in that situation, is to reach out because of the embarrassment, because of the guilt. But it seems that you reached out to people that that were available and that showed care and compassion for you. So I guess just touching on that, just realizing that conquering that fear to really reach out to the closest person that has shown interest in helping you through this, right? Because maybe a lot of other people don't have someone like a great mom and a great family, a great brother and father, but maybe they have somebody, like even a boss, that kind of has remotely shown that they give some kind of crap about you, even if it's that, if you have nothing else.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, absolutely. What I've come to learn in the last 10 years, I would say, it's been a little over 12 years since that episode that I went to treatment to get off the initial hard drugs, and the biggest thing that I've learned since then is that a support system is critical. And I lucked out big time having a family that gives a shit about me and was willing to just drop whatever they're doing and whatever they have going on in life to help me. However, there is, like you mentioned, a lot of people that don't have that, and it's sad. And the saddest part is that a lot of these people, and I was one of them, I just happen to have the support system, but a lot of them don't realize that there's so many people and groups of people that will be there for you. Oftentimes people you haven't even met yet. They will care more about you maybe than you even care about yourself. So the key is admitting defeat when you realize drugs or whatever it is you're dealing with has caused major problems in your life and that you just can't seem to get past it on your own. Admitting that defeat and then reaching out. And a lot of people find that through the 12-step program, which is Narcotics Anonymous or Alcoholics Anonymous. And it's a great program. I actually went to NA for probably 7 or 8 years consistently, and it was instrumental in developing me from a disaster. And I'd say I had like a teenage mind at the time. I had to kind of relearn how to live life as an adult. And that program gave me that support system initially, on top of having my family who was already supporting me.
Besides your family, of course, you said they were a huge aid, like an integral part of your growth and rehabilitation. And then at some point, like, I want to touch on who were those people to you? Like, what did they become to you? They were just strangers? Did they seem to care immediately about you? And then at some point, I asked you if you believed in God or in something or entity or whatever, the universe or, anything. And at some point you said that you might have been a little lost. I can't remember, but that group, you just picked one thing and you picked that. They were like your quote unquote saving grace or something. Do you think that feeling cared for, like, helped you?
Yeah, absolutely. And it's kind of a touchy subject because the 12-step program, if anybody's familiar with it or even heard of it, usually there's an element of like religion or God in it. The biggest misunderstanding about the program is that you have to believe in one specific religion or a specific God, and you don't. It's really about finding a higher power, which to me, my higher power at the time was collectively the group that made up what we call our home group within a 12-step program. And the group as a whole was my higher power. Like, that's what I leaned on, and that's what I turned the stuff that I was having trouble dealing with in my mind and physically and going through physical withdrawals and everything. I was able to kind of turn that over to them so I didn't have to sit with it every day. So in the beginning, I would go to meetings every single day. There was some days where I went twice a day. And then eventually I started volunteering and stuff. But early on, going to those meetings was critical. And one of the sayings that many people know if they've ever been in the 12-step program is meeting makers make it. And it's true. I do believe that's true. But it's being consistent and getting around people who you feel like you can connect with and who understand what you've been through without even needing to talk to them. It's like there's this commonality that everybody has in a group like that. And when you hear other people talk, you realize, like, holy shit, I'm not alone. All these crazy things go through my head or things I've been dealing with. It's like I hear it from John, I hear it from Sally, Susan over here said this and that, and really resonated with me. Like, wow.
You find that a bunch of people are saying like the same exact things that you are.
Mm-hmm. Yep. Exactly. And I swore And if you ever go to 12-step programs, you hear people say a lot, like, I thought they were describing me. But it's true, because the disease of addiction, whether it's alcoholism, drug addiction, whatever it is, porn addiction, people have all different types of addictions. It's like that little hidden away thing you put in Pandora's box and lock it up. And people think that they're monsters inside because of what these addictions start to cause them to do. And then it's very relieving to find out, like, wow,
you're not the only monster.
Not the only monster, exactly. But and everybody has different opinions on, like, the 12-step program. I don't say, like, you need to go to AA and NA or you're not going to make it. I don't think that's true. Sometimes a 12-step program will play a huge part in helping somebody develop and rebuild themselves, especially early on, because we do feel very powerless early on, and we are powerless, so we need something. If we just stay within ourselves, from my own experience, and I've seen it happen with many others, the thoughts just run rampant in your mind, and it always pushes you back to whatever it was you're doing. You have nobody to turn to. So whether it's a 12-step program or a close group of friends, or family, if you're lucky enough to have a supportive family, that's like you hit the jackpot. But if you don't have that, there's so many people and communities, and there's online communities that aren't even the 12-step program. You know, if some people are kind of turned off to the 12-step program, and that's okay. But if you're still struggling, you need to do something about it. Like, you have to do something to fix the problem. And running away from it, which people who are addicted to drugs tend to do, they run away from the problem and end up back in the drug world. It doesn't fix it. It amplifies the problem, and it gets worse and worse. The biggest thing is just to take steps. You mentioned taking the first step, and that really is the most important thing. Like, you have to take the first step to walk that journey. You'd be amazed how many people out there, strangers, absolute strangers, who want to help you. So the whole reason I'm sitting here doing any videos or anything to do with this YouTube channel, it's to help other people. Because I had some people that reached out to me or that were there for me early on, and one of them was my sponsor. So in a 12-step program, typically you get a sponsor, especially if you're new and you're really in rough shape. The sponsor basically is an accountability partner and somebody to walk you through the steps, walk you through the program, and actually do the hard work. Open the books, sit down with your notepads, start writing these things out, resentments, all the stuff that's just been buried deep down. The sponsor is that person to walk you through that. And luckily, I found a good one who wasn't a stranger. It was the father of one of my best friends growing up. So I kind of lucked out there. It's a small town. He had been sober for like 30 years, I think, at that point. A long time, decades. And he practiced what he preached. And I was like, well, it worked for him. I should probably listen to him. And he agreed to sponsor me. And we sat down. I went over to his house, hung out in the garage. Him and I would just sit down and do the work. The stuff that's the most painful to do, but the most effective. And I never had a close relationship with him or anything or knew him that well growing up. Just so happened that he was my friend's dad. But there's sponsors and people who do this all the time for absolute strangers. And you can find people just about anywhere. But you have to get around the right group of people and get in the right environment. That's crucial. And in order to do that, you have to cut off and I hate to say it, but at least in the short term, you have to cut off the network who is not supporting or promoting your growth and fixing the problems that you have with addiction. It's sad to say, but there were some people that I had to literally cut off all contact, delete phone numbers, block them, remove them from social media. I didn't go as far as to change my phone number and everything because I had the same number forever, but I had to cut some people off, and it was hard. And those are some of the things that my sponsor helped me to realize. And it's just something they say you're the average of the 5 people you spend most time with. And I completely believe that's true, and I agree with that. And I've kind of proven that to myself so far in life that it's true. So once you remove certain people who are not promoting the betterment of your health and personal growth, at that point you've made room for new people to come in. And that is critical, is getting around the right types of people and removing yourself from environments or situations or people who are going to drag you back down or back into whatever it is that you're doing that's causing the problems.
So I'm going to hit you with this question. So for people that don't have a family and don't have, aren't as blessed to have a great support system, for people that are still lonely, and not just feel lonely, but actually are lonely, perhaps their drug addiction has caused them to lose everything and everyone, and they're addicted. I want to know what you would tell that person to get off drugs. Like, what would you tell them that is a good reason and a good why to have to get out of their drug addiction?
Yeah, and I didn't really answer that to your last question because you did incorporate that in there. I would say finding your why is very important in anything you're doing in life. Anything that's challenging and hard and going to present obstacles that you have to overcome, the why is always what pushes you. The how to do it, that comes later. As long as you know why and you take the first step, you move forward, take action, the how just presents itself. But as far as why, what I would say today is think that you're going to die in 4 hours. Just imagine, like, stop what you're doing and think, I'm going to be dead in 4 hours. Who is that going to affect? I think whys, your reason why almost always comes down to people in one fashion or another. And just about everybody has somebody in their life. Even if they don't have a big group of people or friends or family, there's somebody that's going to be affected if you die. And I think it's an important exercise and a very effective exercise to literally think, okay, I'm dead in 4 hours. I don't have a chance to say anything to anybody, to prepare anything, to clean up any of my messes. Like, who does this affect? And how does it affect them? Because the reality is, if you don't get addictions under control, they used to say in the 12-step program, there's three places that it leads you to: jails, institutions, or death. It's one of the three. Or to a program of recovery.